Jisoo clutched her small bag tightly as she walked through the massive doors of Galactic Academy. The building was huge, with ceilings that stretched up so high she had to tilt her head back to see them. Strange symbols glowed on the walls. The air smelled different here, clean but with hints of metals and plants she did not know. "Human Student 5A, please proceed to orientation," said a flat voice from somewhere above. Jisoo took a deep breath. She was one of only 5 humans allowed to study here this year. The academy was the best school in the known universe, where the smartest beings from 1,000 worlds came to learn. Getting in had been almost impossible. As she followed the glowing path on the floor, Jisoo saw many different aliens walking through the halls. Some had scales, others had too many limbs, and a few even floated instead of walked. Many of them stopped to stare at her. She heard whispers. "Is that another human? So fragile looking. I heard their brains are very simple." Jisoo kept her eyes forward and tried not to show how much the words hurt. She had faced this before. Humans were new to space travel compared to most other species. Many aliens thought humans were primitive and weak. In the orientation room, 4 other humans sat already. They looked as nervous as Jisoo felt. Before she could join them, a group of tall, blue-skinned students blocked her path. "Look, Do-Han, another soft skin," said one, poking Jisoo's shoulder hard enough to make her step back. The tallest blue alien looked down at Jisoo. His eyes were completely black with no whites, and his face had ridges where eyebrows would be on a human. "I am Do-Han, top student from Krell. Our species helped build this academy when humans were still figuring out how to make fire," he said. His voice was smooth but cold. "How did something like you get accepted here?" Jisoo wanted to explain about her perfect test scores and the 3 years of extra study she had done. She wanted to tell him how hard she had worked. But she knew it would not matter to him. "Excuse me, I need to sit down," she said quietly, trying to move past. Do-Han stepped aside with a mocking bow. "Of course, the human needs to rest its simple brain." His friends laughed as Jisoo took her seat with the other humans. An older alien with gray skin and 4 arms walked to the front of the room. On his chest was the symbol of the academy, a spiral galaxy inside a perfect circle. "Welcome, new students. I am Professor Taiyan," he said. "You represent the best minds from your worlds. For the next 3 years, you will study technologies and sciences beyond what most beings ever see." As Professor Taiyan spoke, Jisoo felt something warm against her chest. The small pendant she always wore was heating up slightly. She touched it through her shirt, making sure it was hidden. No one could know about it. Not even her parents knew what it really was, only that it had been with her since she was a baby. After orientation, Jisoo followed another glowing path to her room. Her roommate was already there. A tall, thin alien with pale yellow skin and large, kind eyes. "Hello, I am Heedless from Larissa," the alien said in a musical voice. "You must be Jisoo of Earth." Jisoo nodded, surprised by the friendly greeting. "Do not mind the Krell students," Heedless said, noticing Jisoo's sad expression. "They think they are better than everyone, even me. And my people have been space travelers for twice as long as theirs." Jisoo smiled a little. "Thank you. It's nice to meet you." As she unpacked her few belongings, Jisoo's hand went to her pendant again. It had cooled down now. Strange that it had heated up during orientation. That had never happened before. That night, as the Academy's artificial night cycle began, Jisoo looked out her window at the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth, small and far away. She had come here to make humans proud, to show the galaxy that her species belonged among the stars. She did not know that many of those stars had once belonged to her. 2 weeks passed at Galactic Academy. Jisoo had learned to find her way around the huge building. She had also learned which hallways to avoid so she would not run into Do-Han and his Krell friends. Today was important. All first-year students had their first big test in quantum mechanics class. Jisoo had studied hard, but she was still nervous. "You will do well," Haenul said as they walked to class together. "I have seen how much you study." Jisoo smiled at her roommate. Haenul had been kind from the start. "Thanks. I just want to prove I belong here." When they entered the classroom, Doohan looked up from his group of friends. "The human thinks she can pass Professor Taeyeon's test," he said loudly. "How cute." Jisoo ignored him and took her seat. Professor Taeyeon walked in a moment later, his 4 arms carrying different teaching tools. "Today's test has 3 parts," he explained. "The first 2 are normal problems. The third is special. It has no known solution. I give it every year to see how you approach an impossible task." The test began. Jisoo found the first 2 parts challenging but manageable. Then she reached the third problem. It showed a complex quantum system with conflicting properties. According to everything she had learned, it could not exist. But as she stared at it, strange ideas filled her mind. Formulas she had never seen before appeared in her thoughts. Without understanding why, Jisoo began to write. Her hand moved quickly across the screen, inputting equations and drawing diagrams. It felt like someone else was guiding her. When time ran out, Jisoo was surprised to see she had finished the entire test, including the impossible problem. Professor Taeyeon collected their work. When he reached Jisoo's station, he paused. His eyes widened as he looked at her screen. "See me after class," he said quietly. When all other students had left, Jisoo approached Professor Taeyeon's desk. She felt worried. Had she done something wrong? "Jisoo," the professor said, "I have been teaching this class for 47 years. No student has ever solved the third problem." "But you said it had no solution," Jisoo replied, confused. "That is what we believed." He showed her test to her, "Yet you provided one, using methods that are not in our curriculum." I don't know how I did that," Jisoo admitted. Her pendant felt warm against her skin again. Professor Taeyeon studied her with all 4 of his eyes. "Where did you learn these formulas?" "I didn't. They just came to me while I was looking at the problem." The professor was quiet for a long moment. "Very interesting. You may go now." That night, Jisoo could not sleep. How had she known those advanced formulas? It scared her. She finally fell asleep late, only to be woken by Haenul shaking her arm. "Jisoo, wake up. You're having a bad dream." Jisoo sat up quickly. "What? What happened?" "You were talking in your sleep," Haenul said. Her large eyes looked worried. "But it wasn't any language I know. And I know 17 languages." "What did it sound like?" Jisoo asked. "Very old, with many hard sounds. You kept saying the same word over and over." "What word?" "It sounded like Astra." The name seemed to echo in Jisoo's mind. It felt important, but she didn't know why. The next day, news of Jisoo's test spread quickly through the academy. Students looked at her differently now, some with new respect, others with suspicion. During lunch, Jisoo sat alone. She saw Director Subin, the head of the academy, watching her from across the room. The tall, serious woman spoke quietly to Professor Taeyeon, both of them looking at Jisoo. As Jisoo ate, Doohan approached her table. "The professors are impressed with you," he said, not sounding friendly. "But I wonder, how does a human solve a problem that the greatest minds in the galaxy could not? Unless you cheated somehow." "I didn't cheat," Jisoo said firmly. Doohan leaned closer. "Then what's your secret, human? No one is that smart by accident." Jisoo felt her pendant grow warm again. Suddenly, words came to her mouth that didn't feel like her own. Perhaps she heard herself say in a voice that sounded older than her 17 years, "You simply underestimate what humans are capable of." Doohan stepped back, surprised by her confident tone. For the first time, he looked uncertain. Jisoo was just as surprised as he was. Jisoo sat alone in the academy garden, trying to clear her mind. The strange test incident had happened 3 days ago, but she still felt confused. Where had those complex formulas come from? Why did everyone now look at her differently? The garden was beautiful, with plants from 100 different worlds growing together. Jisoo liked it here because it was usually quiet. Suddenly, a sharp pain hit her head. Jisoo closed her eyes and grabbed the bench to steady herself. When she opened her eyes, she wasn't in the garden anymore. She stood on the bridge of a massive spaceship. Stars streaked past the huge windows. Aliens she had never seen before worked at control panels. They all wore matching dark uniforms with a symbol on their chests, a spiral inside a perfect circle. "Empress," one of them said, turning to her, "the planet refuses our terms. Shall we proceed with the destruction sequence?" Jisoo felt her mouth moving, but the words weren't hers. They had their chance. Begin the sequence. A great weapon powered up. On the main screen, a beautiful green planet came into view. The weapon fired. The planet cracked like an egg, then exploded into dust. Billions of lives gone in an instant. Jisoo screamed. "Jisoo, Jisoo, are you okay?" She blinked and was back in the garden. Heedless stood over her, looking worried. "I'm fine," Jisoo said, though she wasn't. Her hands shook. "Just a headache." "You were speaking that strange language again," Heedless said. "And you looked different." "Different how?" "Older, harder." Heedless sat beside her. "Jisoo, I've been studying that word you said in your sleep. Astraea." Jisoo's pendant grew warm against her skin. "It's the name of an ancient empire," Heedless continued. "The Astraean Empire ruled most of the galaxy 500 years ago. They were powerful and cruel. A group of species finally joined together to defeat them." Jisoo felt cold despite the warm day. "Why would I know that name? We don't learn about it in Earth schools." "That's what's strange. Most of their history was erased after they fell. Not many people know about them now." Before they could talk more, a message came through on their school devices. It was time for combat training, a class all students had to take. In the training room, students paired up to practice basic defensive moves. As usual, no one wanted to partner with Jisoo. Except today, Do-Han stepped forward. "I'll train with the human," he said with a smile that wasn't friendly. 2 other Krull students stood behind him. Professor Myray, who taught combat, nodded. 3 against 1 is not fair, Do-Han." "Life isn't fair," Do-Han replied. "And she's supposed to be special, right? Let's see how special." Jisoo knew this was bad. Krell were naturally stronger than humans, and Do-Han wanted to embarrass her. They stepped onto the training mat. Do-Han and his friends moved to surround her. "Begin," called Professor Myray. Do-Han attacked first, moving fast for his size. Jisoo tried to block as she'd been taught, but his hit was too strong. She fell back. A second Krell came at her from the side. Jisoo felt fear rising. Then her pendant became hot, almost burning her chest. Suddenly, everything slowed down in her mind. She saw exactly how to move. Jisoo ducked under the second Krell's arm. Her body twisted in a way she never knew it could. Her hand struck a point on his back, and he fell to the floor, unable to move. The third Krell rushed at her. Jisoo stepped aside at the last second, grabbed his arm, and used his own weight to flip him over. He landed hard on his back. Do-Han stared in shock, then attacked with full force. Jisoo blocked every hit. Her moves were perfect, like she had been fighting for centuries. Words she didn't understand came from her mouth as she moved. In 3 quick strikes, Do-Han was on the ground. The room fell silent. Everyone stared at Jisoo. Professor Myray looked stunned. "Where did you learn those combat techniques? They aren't taught anywhere in the galaxy anymore." Jisoo had no answer. She didn't know herself. Later that day, Jisoo was called to see Dr. Myray, the Academy's doctor. They ran tests on her brain. Your neural patterns are unusual, Dr. Myre said, looking at the results. There are two distinct patterns, like two different people in one brain. Jisoo touched her pendant. What does that mean? I don't know, the doctor admitted. But Director Subin wants to see these results right away. As Jisoo left the medical office, she felt watched. In the shadows of the hallway, Doohan stood with a small device in his hand. He had heard everything. Doohan couldn't sleep that night. He kept thinking about what he had heard outside the doctor's office. Two brain patterns. How was that possible? We need to find out more about this human, he told his friends the next morning. Something is not right about her. Why do you care so much? Asked one of his friends. Doohan's face darkened. My family has served as protectors for generations. If there is a threat at this academy, I need to know. After classes, Doohan and his two closest friends gathered in his room. They pulled out special devices they had brought from their homeworld. This will let us into the academy's secure files, Doohan explained, connecting the device to his computer. It's illegal, but we need answers. It took hours to break through the security systems. When they finally got in, they searched for Jisoo's name. Look at this, said one friend, pointing at a file marked HFY Sci-Fi Project Rebirth. Doohan opened it. Inside were hundreds of documents about Jisoo. But the strange thing was, the earliest ones were dated almost 20 years before she was born. There were images too. One showed a small metal chamber with Jisoo inside, floating in a clear liquid. But she looked exactly the same as now, not like a baby or younger child. What is this? Doohan whispered. It looks like she was grown in a lab. They clicked on a video file. It showed Director Subin talking to a group of serious-looking aliens in formal uniforms. The asset is developing as expected, Director Subin said in the video. The suppression field has kept the secondary consciousness dormant, but we're seeing signs of breakthrough. The pendant is the key. Suddenly, their screen went black. The door to Doohan's room slid open. Professor Taeyeon stood there, all four of his arms crossed over his chest. Accessing classified files is grounds for immediate expulsion, he said coldly. Doohan and his friends froze. Professor, we can explain, Doohan started. Save it, Professor Taeyeon said. He walked to the computer and removed Doohan's device. You three will report to Director Subin tomorrow for punishment. After he left, Doohan's friends looked scared. We'll be sent home in disgrace, one said. But Doohan was quiet, thinking. Did you see enough of those files? Jisoo isn't just a human student. She's part of some secret project. And that pendant she always wears is important. Meanwhile, Jisoo sat in her room, trying to understand what was happening to her. The visions were coming more often now. Sometimes she would suddenly know things she had never learned. Hamul entered their room, looking troubled. What's wrong? Jisoo asked. I overheard something strange, Haenul said, sitting on her bed. Director Subin was talking to someone on a secure channel. I was cleaning the air ducts near her office as part of my work-study program. What did she say? She called you the asset and said containment protocols might be needed soon. Jisoo, I think you're in danger. Jisoo touched her pendant. It was always warm now. Did she mention this? Hamul nodded. She said the pendant was showing increased activity and that she might be waking up. She? Who's she? Jisoo asked, though deep down she was afraid she already knew. Before Haenul could answer, their room's computer screen turned on by itself. Director Subin's face appeared. Jisoo, please report to my office immediately, she said. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were hard. Bring your pendant. The screen went black. Don't go, Haenul said. Something is wrong. Jisoo stood up. I need answers. I'll be careful. As she walked toward the director's office, Jisoo noticed more security guards than usual in the hallways. They all watched her pass. Outside the director's office, Jisoo paused. Through the door, she could hear voices arguing. The Empress's consciousness is emerging faster than expected, Director Subin was saying. We may need to terminate the host before full awakening occurs. Terminate? Another voice asked. You mean kill the girl? If necessary, yes. We cannot risk Empress So-mai returning. The galaxy barely survived her the first time. Jisoo stepped back, her heart pounding. They were talking about killing her, and who was Empress So-mai? As if in answer, her pendant began to glow. Jisoo backed away from Director Subin's door. They wanted to kill her. She needed to run, to hide. But where? The academy was on a space station. There was nowhere to go. As Jisoo turned to flee, her pendant's glow grew brighter. It felt hot against her skin, almost burning. She pulled it out from under her shirt to look at. The small metal disc had strange symbols carved into it. Now they glowed with blue light. Jisoo had never seen it do this before. Suddenly, alarms began to sound throughout the academy. Red lights flashed in the hallways. A mechanical voice spoke over the speakers. Alert! Ancient defense systems activated. Identify. Empress So-mai, sovereign of the Astrian Dominion, detected. All security measures engaged. Jisoo froze. The voice had said her pendant detected Empress So-mai, but there was no Empress here, just her. Unless. The door to Director Subin's office slid open. The director stood there with 4 security guards. Her face looked grim. It's happening, she said. Restrain her. Now. The guards moved toward Jisoo. Her pendant's glow became blinding. A pulse of energy burst from it, knocking everyone back. The walls of the hallway lit up with the same symbols that were on the pendant. What's happening? Jisoo cried out. She didn't understand any of this. The pendant floated up from her chest, still connected to the chain around her neck. It spun faster and faster. Then it projected a hologram in the air. A woman appeared in the light. She looked like Jisoo, but older with harder eyes. She wore elaborate clothes with the same spiral symbol that was on the academy uniforms. Greetings, Vessel, the hologram said. I am Empress So-mai, last ruler of the Astrian Empire. If you're seeing this message, my consciousness is beginning to merge with yours. Jisoo stared in shock. Director Subin and the guards had backed away, watching. 500 years ago, the hologram continued. My empire was about to fall. I transferred my consciousness into this pendant with a plan to be reborn when the time was right. You, Vessel, were specially created to house my mind. You are me, reborn. No, Jisoo whispered. I'm Jisoo. I'm human. The hologram smiled. You were grown from my DNA. You look human because I made my scientists add human DNA to make you seem harmless. But you are Astrian royalty. The Academy knows this. They've been watching you, waiting to see if I would awaken in you. Director Subin stepped forward. The hologram speaks the truth, Jisoo. You were created in a lab 20 years ago. The government has kept you under observation. The pendant contains the consciousness of the most terrible ruler in galactic history. Students and teachers had gathered at the end of the hallway, drawn by the alarms. Duhan pushed his way to the front. His eyes widened as he saw the hologram. The Astrian Empress, he said. My ancestors fought against her armies. The hologram turned to look at the crowd. Ah, Akrel. Your people were always troublesome. But soon I will be fully reborn. This girl's mind will join with mine, and I will rule again. Jisoo felt dizzy. Was this true? Was she not really herself, but some kind of copy made to host an ancient empress? No, she said more firmly. I don't want this. I don't want to be you. The hologram laughed. It's not your choice, Vessel. The process has already begun. Memories flooded Jisoo's mind. Planets conquered, armies commanded, a golden throne atop a mountain of bones. But they weren't her memories. They belonged to So-mai. Fight it. Jisoo. Haenul called from the crowd. That's not you. Jisoo grabbed the pendant with both hands. I am Jisoo. I won't let you take over. As she struggled, the Academy's ancient systems responded to the pendant. Panels in the walls opened. Old weapons emerged, pointing at everyone except Jisoo. The Academy itself was once an Astrian fortress. Director Subin explained quickly. The systems still recognized the Empress's authority. Jisoo looked around in horror. Everyone was afraid of her now. Even Duhan looked scared. Stop, she told the pendant. I don't want to hurt anyone. But the weapons remained ready. And in her mind, Empress Somi laughed. Chaos spread through the Academy. Students ran in all directions. Alarms continued to sound. The ancient weapons remained pointed at everyone except Jisoo. We need to contain her now, Director Subin said into her communicator. Send the special forces. Use the suppression field. Jisoo backed away, still holding her glowing pendant. Stay away from me. I don't understand what's happening. Jisoo. Haenul called. Come with me. I can help you. Jisoo looked at her roommate. Could she trust her? Could she trust anyone? Director Subin's face hardened. No one move. Government forces are on their way. Professor Taiyan suddenly stepped forward. Jisoo, this way, he said calmly. Quickly. To everyone's surprise, the professor motioned for Jisoo to follow him down a side hallway. Without better options, Jisoo ran after him. Haenul followed close behind. What are you doing, Professor? Director Subin shouted. Stop them. The guards moved to follow, but the Academy's ancient weapons turned to track them. No one dared to move. Professor Taiyan led Jisoo and Haenul through rarely used corridors. He pressed his hand against a hidden panel, and a secret door opened in the wall. In here, he said. Hurry. They entered a small room filled with old equipment. Professor Taiyan sealed the door behind them. Why are you helping me? Jisoo asked, still fearful. Because I know what they plan to do to you, he replied. They don't want to help you, Jisoo. They want to destroy you and take the pendant. How do you know this? Haenul asked. Because I've been watching over Jisoo since she was created, the professor said. I was part of the team that made her, but I left when I learned their true plans. Jisoo felt lost. So I'm really just a copy. A vessel for Empress Some. No, Professor Taiyan said firmly. You have Somi's DNA, yes. The pendant contained her consciousness. But you, Jisoo, your mind, your soul, those are yours. You are your own person. This made Jisoo feel a little better, but then the pendant pulsed, and pain shot through her head. More memories that weren't hers flooded her mind. She's trying to take control, Jisoo gasped. We need to leave the academy, Professor Taiyan said. There's a small ship in the maintenance bay. We can. A loud boom shook the room. Someone was trying to break through the door. They found us, Haenul said. The door began to glow red as a cutting tool sliced through it from the other side. This way, Professor Taiyan said, opening another hidden door. The maintenance tunnels run throughout the station. As they escaped into the tunnel, the door behind them burst open. Special forces in black armor rushed in, carrying strange weapons. Find them, a voice ordered. The asset must be secured. The three fugitives moved quickly through the dark tunnels. Jisoo's pendant provided enough light to see by. After many twists and turns, they reached a small bay with a ship. This will take us to the nearest planet, Professor Taiyan explained as he started the engines. From there, we can find help. But before they could leave, the bay doors opened. Duhan stood there, alone. Stop, he called. Professor Taiyan raised a weapon. Stay back, Krell. Wait, Jisoo said. Duhan, why are you here? Duhan looked at her with hate in his black eyes. My great-grandmother died fighting against Empress Somi's forces. Our family swore to prevent her return. He raised a small device. This will destroy the pendant, and you with it. Duhan. No. Haenul cried. Jisoo isn't the Empress. She's fighting against her. It doesn't matter, Duhan said coldly. The risk is too great. He pressed a button on the device. A beam of energy shot toward Jisoo. Without thinking, Jisoo raised her hand. The beam stopped in midair, frozen by a power she didn't know she had. Impossible, Duhan whispered. I'm not so me, Jisoo said, and I won't let you kill me. With a gesture, she sent the energy beam back toward the ceiling above Duhan. It exploded, bringing down debris that blocked the doorway, but did not harm him. How did I do that? Jisoo asked, looking at her hands in wonder and fear. The Empress's powers are awakening in you, Professor Taeyeon said grimly. We need to leave now. More will come. As the ship rose from the bay, Jisoo looked out the window at the academy growing smaller below them. What was she becoming? And could she stop it? The small ship sped through space. Jisoo sat quietly, watching stars go by. Her pendant was still warm, but had stopped glowing. Where are we going? Haenul asked Professor Taeyeon. To a planet called Nexa, he replied. There are people there who can help us. What people? Jisoo asked. Everyone seems to be afraid of me, or want to use me. Professor Taeyeon looked back at her with his 4 eyes. Not everyone believes what the government says about the Astrian Empire. History is often written by the winners. The ship landed on a small planet with blue grass and purple trees. The professor led them to a town hidden in a valley. People of many different species lived there. They watched curiously as the 3 walked by. At the center of town stood a large building made of stone. Professor Taeyeon knocked on the door in a special pattern. The door opened. A tall human man with gray hair stood there. Taeyeon, he said, you finally brought her. This is Jinho, Professor Taeyeon told Jisoo. He leads the Truth Seekers. Jinho bowed to Jisoo. We've waited a long time to meet you. Inside the building, more people gathered around a large table. They came from many different worlds, but they all wore the same symbol, a spiral inside a circle. The Astrian symbol. Why do you wear that? Jisoo asked, pointing to the symbol. That's the mark of the empire that tried to rule everyone. Jinho smiled sadly. That's what they want you to believe. But the early Astrian Empire wasn't evil. It protected many worlds from worse threats. He turned to a wall covered with old pictures and maps. 500 years ago, the Astrian Empire stretched across half the galaxy. For many generations, it brought peace and progress to all its worlds. Until Empress So-Mi, Jisoo said. Yes, Jinho nodded. So-Mi was different from the rulers before her. She was cruel. She used the empire's power to hurt people, not help them. That's when the rebellion began. Jisoo touched her pendant, and now she wants to come back. Through me. The pendant doesn't just hold So-Mi's consciousness, Jinho explained. It contains the minds of all previous Astrian rulers. The good ones, too. This surprised Jisoo. I don't understand. The pendant is a memory vessel, Professor Taeyeon said. Each ruler added their knowledge to it before death. So-Mi was the last to do so, and her mind is the strongest in the pendant now. But the others are there too. That's why we need you. Jisoo, Jinho said. You can access the wisdom of the good rulers. You could restore what was lost, a just and protective empire. Jisoo stepped back. I don't want to be any kind of empress. I just want to be me. Haenul put a hand on Jisoo's shoulder. No one can force you. You have a choice. Suddenly, alarms sounded throughout the building. We have ships approaching, someone called. Government forces. On screens around the room, they could see 5 large ships landing outside the town. They found us so quickly, Professor Taeyeon said. Someone must have tracked our ship. The door burst open. To everyone's surprise, Duhan stood there, breathing hard. I followed you, he said, and now government ships are following me. Jin-Ho reached for a weapon, but Ji-Soo stepped forward. Wait, why did you come, Duhan? To try to kill me again? Duhan shook his head. To warn you. Director Subin isn't working for the government. She's part of a group that wants the pendant's power for themselves. They don't want to destroy it. They want to use it. Why should we believe you? Hae-Nul asked. Because after you left, I heard their plans, Duhan said. They don't care about protecting people from So-Mei. They want to control whoever has her power. He looked directly at Ji-Soo. I still think you're dangerous, but no one should have that kind of power. Especially not them. Outside, soldiers in black armor began to move toward the building. We need to run, Hae-Nul said. No, Ji-Soo replied. I'm tired of running. Her pendant began to glow again. This time, Ji-Soo didn't fight it. Instead, she closed her eyes and reached into the pendant with her mind. Past So-Mei's dark presence, she felt others, older, wiser minds. They had been rulers too, but different kinds of rulers. Help me, Ji-Soo whispered to them. Not to conquer, to protect. Power flowed through her, but it felt different this time. It felt right. The soldiers surrounded the building. Through the windows, Ji-Soo could see Director Subin step out of the lead ship. She wore a different uniform now, black with gold trim. Give us the girl and the pendant. Director Subin's voice boomed through speakers. You have 1 minute before we attack. Inside, Jin-Ho and the Truth Seekers prepared their weapons. We'll protect you, Jin-Ho told Ji-Soo. But we're outnumbered. Ji-Soo looked around at these people ready to fight for her. Her pendant glowed brighter as she connected with the minds inside it. There's another way, she said. The pendant is offering me full access to Empress So-Mei's powers. I could use them to defeat the soldiers. No, Professor Taeyeon warned. If you fully connect with So-Mei, her consciousness might take over yours completely. But if I don't, everyone here might die, Ji-Soo replied. Hae-Nul grabbed Ji-Soo's hands. There must be another way. Stay yourself, Ji-Soo. That's what makes you special, not the Empress inside you. Duhan stepped forward. The professor is right. My family's records say that So-Mei was cunning. She might want you to use her power to create an opening for her to take control. Ji-Soo closed her eyes. Inside the pendant, she could feel So-Mei's consciousness pushing against hers, trying to get out. But she could also sense the other rulers, their wisdom, their experience. There's a third option, Ji-Soo said slowly. I don't have to use So-Mei's power. I can try to access the knowledge of the earlier rulers instead. Is that possible? Jin-Ho asked. I think so. They're all in here. Ji-Soo touched the pendant. But it's risky. I'll have to open myself to the pendant fully while keeping So-Mei's mind separate from mine. Outside, the soldiers began to move closer. They carried heavy weapons. 30 seconds, came Director Subin's voice. Whatever you're going to do it quickly, Jin-Ho said. Ji-Soo sat on the floor. She held the pendant in both hands and closed her eyes. In her mind, she pictured a door, a barrier between her thoughts and So-Mei's. She needed to keep that door closed while opening others. The pendant grew hot. Ji-Soo felt like she was falling through space. In her mind, she saw faces, dozens of them, each a previous ruler of the Astrian Empire. They spoke to her in voices that somehow made sense, though they used languages she had never learned. Help me protect these people, she asked them. Show me how, but let me remain myself. Knowledge flowed into her mind, battle strategies, diplomatic techniques, technological secrets, but most importantly, she felt a deep sense of responsibility. The best rulers had cared for their people above all else. Ji-Soo opened her eyes. They glowed with blue light. 10 seconds. Director Subin warned. I know what to do, Jisoo said, standing. Her voice sounded older, wiser, but still her own. Newell looked worried. Jisoo? Is it still you? Yes. Jisoo smiled. I'm still me, but I understand more now. She walked to the door. The others tried to stop her, but she gently pushed past them. Outside, Jisoo stood alone, facing Director Subin and 50 armed soldiers. The director's eyes widened. Surrender the pendant, Director Subin commanded. I have a counteroffer, Jisoo replied calmly. Leave now, and I won't have to show you what I've learned. Director Subin laughed. You're just a girl. I'm a human girl, Jisoo corrected her. But I carry the wisdom of the greatest rulers this galaxy has ever known. She raised her hand. The pendant floated up, spinning faster and faster, until it created a shield of blue energy around the building. Impossible, Director Subin whispered. Only So-Mei could do that. No, Jisoo said. Any Astrian ruler could. So-Mei just used it for the wrong reasons. Behind Jisoo, the door opened. Du-Han stepped out, followed by Newell, Professor Tai-Yan, and Jin-Ho. I have allies now, Jisoo continued, including a Krell who once hated me. She looked at Du-Han with a smile. Du-Han stepped forward. I was wrong about you, Jisoo. To everyone's surprise, more people emerged from the town, dozens of students from the academy. They gathered behind Jisoo. We followed Du-Han, one explained. We want to know the truth. Director Subin's face hardened. Kill them all, she ordered her soldiers. The soldiers raised their weapons. Jisoo took a deep breath. The choice was made. Now came the real test. The soldiers fired their weapons. Energy beams shot toward Jisoo and her friends. Jisoo raised both hands. The pendant pulsed, and a dome of blue light expanded around them. The weapons beams hit the dome and disappeared into it. How are you doing this? Director Subin demanded. You should not have this much control. Because she's not using So-Mei's power, Professor Tai-Yan realized. She's channeling the earlier rulers, the ones who built rather than destroyed. Jisoo stepped forward. The blue dome moved with her. Inside her mind, she could feel So-Mei's consciousness raging, trying to break free. But the other rulers helped Jisoo keep that door closed. I've seen the truth in the pendant. Jisoo called out to the soldiers. Director Subin doesn't work for the government. She leads a secret group that wants to use the Astrian technology to rule the galaxy themselves. She turned to the academy students. Show them. Du-Han held up a small device. It projected images from the academy's secret files. They showed Director Subin meeting with shadowy figures, planning to steal Astrian weapons. Your leader has lied to you, Jisoo told the soldiers. She doesn't want to protect the galaxy. She wants to control it. Some of the soldiers lowered their weapons, confused. Don't listen to her, Director Subin shouted. She's using Astrian mind tricks. I'm using the truth, Jisoo replied. Her pendant projected more images, the history of the Astrian Empire, both its good years and its dark final days under So-Mei. For generations, the Astrians were protectors, Jisoo explained. They united worlds against common threats. Only in the end, under So-Mei, did they become cruel. Director Subin pulled out her own weapon. Enough. I'll take the pendant myself. She fired directly at Jisoo. The beam hit the blue shield and stopped, but instead of disappearing, it began to push through. She has Astrian technology too, Jin-Ho warned. Jisoo felt the shield weakening. So-Mei's voice grew louder in her mind. Asterisk, let me out. I can destroy her asterisk. No, Jisoo whispered. There's been enough destruction. Instead, Jisoo reached deeper into the pendant, finding the oldest rulers, the founders of the Astrian civilization. Their wisdom was different. They had united worlds through peace, not war. The blue shield changed, becoming a spiral of light that reached out and wrapped around Director Subin's weapon. It pulled the energy from it until the weapon fell apart in her hands. Impossible, Director Subin gasped. The first Astrians were builders, not destroyers, Jisoo said. They created technologies that worked with life, not against it. One by one, the soldiers put down their weapons. They could see the truth now. Director Subin looked around wildly. You fools. She'll enslave us all. No, Jisoo said quietly. That's what you wanted to do. She walked closer to Director Subin. I'm not going to punish you. That's what Some would do. Instead, you'll face a fair trial for your crimes. As if her words had broken a spell, several soldiers moved forward and surrounded Director Subin. We serve the real government, their leader said, not her private agenda. The battle was over before it truly began. Later, as medical ships arrived to help those who needed it, Jisoo sat with her friends, Hamul, Professor Taiyan, Jinho, and even Duhan. What will you do now? Haenul asked. You have all that power and knowledge. Jisoo looked at the pendant in her hand. I'm still me, Jisoo. I'm human, but I can use this wisdom to help people. Will you return to the academy? Professor Taiyan asked. Jisoo smiled. Yes, but things will be different now. Duhan looked at her with new respect in his eyes. I judged you unfairly. My people have a saying. True strength is not in conquest, but in bringing peace. I think the first Astrian rulers would agree with that, Jisoo replied. In the days that followed, the truth spread across the galaxy. Jisoo returned to the academy, still a student but now also a teacher in her own way. The other students who had once scorned her now looked to her with respect. In her room at night, Jisoo still spoke with the ancient rulers in the pendant, learning from their wisdom while keeping Soma's darkness contained. It was not always easy, but it was her choice, to be both human and something more. The greatest power, she told her class one day, is not in making others serve you, but in choosing to serve others. And in that moment, Jisoo knew she had found her own path, not as an empress who overthrew reigns, but as a human girl who reclaimed her own destiny.